again with this.
Well,
let's give them the stiff
it's also
notes.
public hearing.
Right,
Yeah.
we still got a public.
Well, I think there's an important question here too. What kind of dancing?
I think it's just like your old typical dance floor that, I don't know how many square feet it is that they plan on it, but I think it's just like.
So you're not having dancers there?
No, just a general.
I'm just thinking that question was not asked, and I thought that was a very important question to ask, because I'm sure, Mr. McGee, would you have wanted that in your district?
No,
That's what
I would go make sure that it wasn't like this.
You see them personally.
At this point, could you move over and we'll have a public hearing, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that has any comment or questions on this issue? Seeing none, I would like a motion to close public hearing.
So we'll
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Further discussion among council?
motion. Gary, it's your district.
It's
We'll
a
have
chicken
motion.
and egg philosophy. You can,
Well, I mean, like I stated before, I think if they feel more comfortable moving forward, just knowing that if you don't get the special use, you know, you are, it is what it is. But I'm all for it, so I make a motion that we,
With the
pending the stipulations that are listed.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will vote with Mr. McGee simply because it is his district, and I'd like to set the tone that if something comes up in my district, they would be deferring to me. So I'm going to defer to Mr. McGee and vote yes in the interest of cooperation and bipartisanship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
conundrum is solved.
Okay, item O.
This is the first reading of an ordinance amending Article 6, District Use Regulations, Section G, Commercial Outdoor Recreation.
Mr. Solicitor?
Yeah. Do you want me to explain this? Sure. You asked me to prepare an amendment to the zoning ordinance that dealt with the racing or course riding of ATVs and motorcycles. I understand it's been an issue in your district, and this is to clarify the zoning ordinance, which provides that anything that's not specifically permitted in the ordinance would require a special use permit. You've indicated that you want to clarify that this is specifically dealt with in the ordinance, and you want to prohibit it. So that is exactly what this amendment does. It does it in two parts of the ordinance. It does it in the commercial outdoor recreation, and it also does it in the outdoor recreation operated by nonprofit organizations. So that way it would be covered whether the race or the event, whatever you want to call it, purported to be either nonprofit or for-profit. It would be covered by this amendment. That requires that we actually address two parts of the ordinance. Like I said, outdoor recreation operated by nonprofit and commercial outdoor recreation. There are actually two matrices in the zoning ordinance, two boxes in two different sections. So it says no in every zone, which was a request from you as well as, I think, Councilwoman Duxbury. So the introduction tonight is actually fun, because it's an amendment to a zoning ordinance. The process that's followed is actually mandated by the Zoning Enabling Act and our zoning ordinance. And so while this is a first reading, in situations like this, typically the Zoning Enabling Act, which has its own notice provisions, which are actually more, they ensure more notice than even our charter does for zoning amendments. The Zoning Enabling Act would actually dictate how notice is given. So This will be referred to the Planning Commission for its study and recommendation to the council. The recommendation is only precatory, it's not binding. They have 45 days to do that unless the applicant, the person asking for the change, gives them more time. It should be you. So if they need more time, they ask for it. They can get it with your permission. Then it comes back and the council advertises. I think it's for, it's in 45-24-53 of the general laws. I think it's 3 weeks successive to the actual hearing date before here. Then we're going to have a public hearing. People should be aware that the Enabling Act specifically requires the town to tell people that the amendment to the zoning ordinance can be amended during the hearing based on the public testimony that is received. So the notice that the public is getting tonight of this ordinance may very well not be the end-all. It may be amended that night during the public hearing and as a result of some of the testimony that's offered. So if you're really concerned about this issue, be sure to come to the public hearing. That is absolutely essential. So that's, in a nutshell, what's being... This could have been done, in my opinion, without putting it on the agenda tonight. But you put it on and that's fine. It lets people know in advance that this process is going to be undertaken. But the fact is that the State Enabling Act says you can just submit it and it immediately gets referred to the Planning Commission, and there doesn't have to be a notice like this. I think it's good that you did it because it put everybody's awareness up. It put the profile of this issue up, which I know has been an issue in your district. So that's it.
So will they have 2 opportunities to speak in public then, at the Planning Commission and then in front of the council at the public hearing?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
the only notice before the Planning Commission is going to be their agenda.
Right.
Nobody gets any written notice of an amendment like this. You don't get a certified mail or anything.
Right, but those interested should be paying attention to the agendas for the Planning Commission so that they will know that that item is going to be discussed at the Planning Commission.
Yes, and
So they can voice concerns at the Planning Commission meeting when it's on the agenda, and they can come to the public hearing when the council is ready to vote.
that's right.
Okay.
That's
So
right.
this does not put it out to advertising then?
This particular, well, this tonight, what all tonight really does is puts into motion the process that is very specifically described in the Zoning Enabling Act, and therefore also in our zoning ordinance, of the process that has to be followed by state law. And that process begins with a referral to the Planning Commission, who has to have a hearing and make a recommendation back to this council within 45 days.
And then we advertise.
And then, once you get it, we've actually done it. You can do you can anticipate that you're going to get it back from the Planning Commission within the 45 days, especially if you coordinate with them and communicate. You can actually advertise during the time that the Planning Commission is considering it. You can advertise that you're going to have a public hearing. So there can be an overlap of the 3 weeks that you're advertising for the public hearing here while it's being considered by the Planning Commission.
So are you actually looking for a vote tonight to
No.
No.
You don't need any vote at all.
I didn't think so.
You don't ever need a vote when you merely introduce an ordinance, and that's all this is. This is the introduction of an ordinance. It was put down as a first reading.
So there's no, I'm not willing to spend money to advertise at this point until after the next step. Is that what you're saying? It's not going to be out advertising, we're not going to spend money advertising for this yet.
I think we have to coordinate with when the Planning
Yeah, I
Commission's
think
going to bring it up.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what I said, is that the best way to look at it is if you coordinate with the Planning Commission and you actually get some idea of how quickly they think they can handle this request, you can do it in a very tight schedule if you want to, but you don't have to. I mean, you can take the time you want to take to do this.
I think you
I
raised
think
a good
this
point
is-
with the advertising, because our advertising bill is really, and we just probably want to get a sense of what the Planning Commission's doing.
The advertising for this will be very short, because it's not gonna be a big ad, because the changes are very, I mean, it's one page.
Yeah, but we still have to make sure that everybody's on board with this before we spend. We're way over budget on advertising, because it seems to be a new ordinance coming out every month, and we're way overboard on the advertising. So before I'm willing to spend any more money, I wanna make sure public hearings are out, people have had a chance to voice their opinion, and the council has had a chance to voice their opinion.
Well, I think from, just my own personal experience with this last year, I think there are gonna be a lot of people interested. There are a lot of folks from the motorcycle and ATV riding world, and they're always very vocal, and they're always passionate about what they think is right, and I know there are a lot of people in the neighborhood, so I think the hearings will be well attended, if you want my prediction. So,
Well, I did ask for this to be put on because obviously I've gotten lots of emails, lots of phone calls, and a lot of concerns from the neighbors, the residents of that area. So I think it's only fair to have both sides in public for a hearing. Any other discussion, right?
the only thing I would,
First reading, if there's no action to be taken.
the only thing I would point out, just for those who are curious, I believe that under the zoning ordinance right now, a race like this would require a special use permit at a minimum. Because, under the zoning ordinance, because it's not specified. It's remarkable, but there's nothing in our zoning ordinance about racing or motorized course riding, other than, I think for personal use, people they do it all the time. They've been doing it since I was a kid in Coventry. I didn't grow up in Coventry, but I grew up in Foster, and it's been carried on for a long time. The question is whether you can have events that are more than personal use, and whether that requires a special use permit, and in my opinion, it does, under the current ordinance, because it's simply not specified.
Any other questions? Okay, Mrs. George, next.
Public comment?
Public comment, raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Lawrence, you had his hand up first.
My name is Robert Lawrence, 26 Dodge Street, Coventry, Rhode Island. I've complained about this right-of-way issue quite a bit, but I sent an email a couple of weeks ago to Mr. Sibley and to the town manager questioning the fence that was going up on the right-of-way. And the only answer I got to my email was that you didn't need a permit to put a fence up on your own property. So am I to thank the council for putting up a fence on the town property, or did she get a permit to put the fence up on the town property? At the right-of-way.
Is it on town property? Have we determined that?
To my knowledge, it's not on town property, and that is a variegated vegetation growth.
It's on the town property.
Mr. Lawrence, if you wanted to check if a permit was pulled for it, you can go to the building department and...
No, I sent the email, and the answer was that they didn't need a permit if they put it on a roof.
Oh, well, there you go.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's
I
not
looked
on
into
property.
if a permit was needed, and I was told a permit was not needed,
That's what you told me.
yes.
But they put it on the town property.
The fence has been put up,
Yes.
okay. I'll have my staff look into it,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, public comment? Yes, Mr. Cody.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gary Cody, 29 Patine Street, Coventry. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council tonight. Two things that were discussed on the agenda that I would like to address with everyone tonight. One, as much as being in the construction industry, such as I am, I can appreciate a healthy capital improvement budget. I really can. But I'm afraid that dipping into or changing what, I'm not going to call it a previous council, I'm going to call it the council that I sat on, accomplished with any excess revenue that the town, any surplus that the town had going towards paying the unfunded pension liabilities. Not the pension liabilities, but the unfunded portion of the pension liabilities. We still have a municipal pension that's at, I don't know, or a police pension that's at 14 or 16%, the other one's at 27 or 28%. And we're going to take any monies that were allocated in the past to help pay down that unfunded liability, and we're going to create a capital improvements fund, which I agree that the town needs a capital improvements fund. It needed it when I sat on the council. Didn't have the nerve to tax that high to put one together, I'll be honest with you. I was kind of looking to get reelected, so I didn't do it, okay? But we need some capital improvements in town. Of course, I've never seen anything, or very little, go on a referendum ballot that called for town improvements that got turned down either, other than the police station. So I think there are other ways to accomplish capital improvements in the town of Coventry. I think history shows that. I'm afraid that it's somewhere down the line it's going to affect our bond rating. I know when we went and met with the Moody's, the fact that we were appropriating those funds to pay down the unfunded pension liability was what helped convince Moody's to take the negative outlook off of our bond rating. The fact that we're no longer going to appropriate those funds for that purpose scares me that Moody's may at some point put that negative outlook back on our bond rating. And that has a potential to affect us if we ever have to bond projects in the future. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the first reading of the ordinance that was introduced tonight. For no other reason that I think it singles out Mr. Brown. I think it singles out the Ryoba Motorcycle Association, Off-Road Association. We're talking about an association of off-road riders that raise money for charitable contributions. Mr. Brown covers the insurance, he does it on his own property. I don't care if it's 2, if it's 20, or if it's 200. If it's Mr. Brown's responsibility, if the town wants to require him to hire an off-duty or a detail or fire or whatever, that's one thing. But when do we, as a government of the people, stop telling people what they can do on their own private property? You know, when do we stop doing that? You know, I can tell you that in my instance, and I live in the eastern end of town, I can't have anything on my property that's over 13.6 high, for whatever reason, I don't know, because the telephone wires, the electrical wires are certainly higher than that. But I can't have anything on my property that's over 13.6 high. I can't have an unregistered vehicle on my property, whether it's brand new, whether it's a 1920, or whether, I can't have an unregistered vehicle on my property. I can't have an unleashed dog on my property. I can't have. Well, you know, if I live out in the western end and I got 100 acres of land and 40 of my friends decide to come over with their ATVs on Saturday and ride on my property, the town's going to come write me up for it? I mean, doesn't make any sense. These folks are raising money for charities. Doesn't make any sense to shut them down. If you want to regulate it a little bit better, maybe I understand that. If you want to look out for participant safety, maybe I understand that. But to shut it down completely, I don't know. I don't understand that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Nicole Richard, 655 Cahoon Road. I'm with Mr. Cody. We brought all of this to the police chief for not last year's race. You canceled last year's race. Thank you for that. The year before, we brought it to the police chief. He had no issue, and we were advised we did not need a police detail. We took it to Western Coventry Fire Department. We had, how many did we have? 2? 3. 3 emergency vehicles on scene for the entire weekend. There was no injuries to my knowledge. There was no disruption to our neighbors to my knowledge. There was, don't even look close enough. There were hundreds of children there that benefited from this, and the group gave back to our local high school. So again, I'm with Mr. Cody. If you'd like to set some sort of regulation, I can completely agree with that, but as far as canceling it and taking this away from our children, I don't think that's fair. I don't think regulating, again, what Mr. Cody said, we do on our own property, it falls on my insurance, whether it be my homeowner's insurance or my health insurance if something happens to my children. You want to take that from them, it keeps them off the streets, it keeps them out of trouble with the police department, it keeps them focused and driven in school so that they can continue to ride. And And I say shame on anyone who wants to take that away from our children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other public comment this evening? Yes, ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Nancy Sullivan. I live at 6 White Oak Court. It is very important to me and to a lot of the town people that we ask the elected officials to keep in mind as they speak publicly, communicate publicly, in media, social media, that you remember you are in your seats due to the voters voting for you. Your spoken and written words are remembered and cause the voters to vote accordingly. Recently, at a school committee member put on social media some very offensive comments to many constituents. Two meetings ago, at the budget work session, Mr. Lavoisinier also spoke offensively when he went on for over 10 minutes negatively as perceived by some of the public regarding the educating cost of special education students, commenting on the increased percentage of students receiving assistance. You also said that these students might not need services after time. Well, Mr. Lavoisinier, I can clearly understand that you don't understand the world of a special education child. A child who has needs through receiving services will learn how to learn with theirs, but they will never go away. A child who is dyslexic all their life. I urge you to remember to speak carefully, respectfully, and before you speak or ramble on, you engage your brain before your mouth. Think before you speak. Perhaps you will not say these things that you will offend the people who very well may be voting you into that seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
This first amendment, on this side.